All right, take 4. This is going to be the good one. Hello, I'm Kenny from Malbot, and today I'm here for ProVideo to talk about the X-Rite i1 Filmmaker Kit and Colorchecker video. These products were sent to me by X-Rite to review, so there is an article that goes with this video on ProVideo right now. Check that out for more detail that I'm going to go into here. So first of all, what are they and why do you need them? Well, let's start with the Colorchecker video. What this is essentially a advanced gray card. By that I mean back in the day of film and today, now that we have the resurgence of film, you would shoot a gray card like this at the head of every roll. This is an 18% gray card, middle gray, and what this does is it allows the developer to have a known target for which to develop your footage. So since this is not a random gray, we know this is neutral gray, or middle gray rather, the developer can say, okay, there's the card, I need to make sure that this film is developed such so that that card is the correct color and the correct exposure value. If you don't send any notes to the developer, they will make sure that this middle gray is exposed to middle at this color every time. Also in black and white, this would just be used for exposure. So that's what this did. And if you are shooting digital, you can technically use this to white balance. It might not be 100% accurate, but I think it would be. You could also use this to expose for. So if you know that your camera wants 18% gray to be at a certain IRE value, this would be an easy way to do that. Obviously, you just put this in the frame, adjust your lights or your f-stop or ISO, whatever you need to do to make sure that this is at the correct IRE, and then you know your scene is exposed properly. With digital, you kind of always want to have, whatever your good value is to always be what you shoot. So if you, let's say you're shooting a dark and moody scene, on digital, it might not always be the best idea to actually shoot it dark and moody. What you want is your exposure values, the ratio between exposure values, to be where you want them to be, and then in post you would darken everything, because if you shoot dark on digital, you're going to get icky noise. So if it's supposed to be a bright scene, if it's supposed to be a dark scene, for digital capture, you always want your, whatever the best, most optimum exposure value for 18% gray or skin tones or whatever, to be the target that you hit. So the Colorchecker video takes some of that guesswork out when it comes to color and exposure. So on this side, that's a piece of white paper. On this side, you've got a white target. Now, this is a calibrated white. We know this is neutral white because people at X-Rite took the time to ensure that. If you were to white balance off this random piece of paper that came in it, you might be accurate, but probably not. There's also the common thing of like, oh, get that PA over here with the white shirt. Shouldn't be wearing white on set. Bring the PA over here with the white shirt. We're going to white balance off his shirt. Bad idea. What if he's sweaty? He's got a bit of tinge to the shirt. That's going to affect your color balance. So you always want to make sure that you're shooting a calibrated white to white balance off of. So once you've done that for each new setup, each new scene, then you're going to shoot a few seconds of the color chart. Now what we have here is skin tones, a gray grayscale, white, gray, shadow gray, black, and then saturated and desaturated colors specific for video. By shooting this target, you give yourself a known set of values in post for which to work off of. The easiest version of which is hidden, not even hidden, but is in DaVinci. DaVinci Resolve has a feature that allows you to define the color checker in your scene, in your shot, and then tell it like, okay, I want this at X color space, X gamma, and it comes from Y color space. So for instance, if I were to use this footage, I would say, okay, this is shot on C-Log. I want it to be in Rec 709 color space and Rec 709 gamma. Or I could say, I shot this in C-Log. I want it in ACES color space and gamma 2.2. Something like that. Get crazy. Whatever you need, there's a lot of different options. And it does that automatically. If you don't edit in DaVinci or don't color in DaVinci, you can also, well, you'd have to download it first and then use that feature and then just export a LUT for use in Premiere or whatever program you're using. DaVinci's free, so you can't go wrong there. You can also use this to match cameras, right? You shoot two different cameras, shoot the same color chart, and then you can either with DaVinci automatically or by eye or however you want to do it, match the two cameras so that the color is the same. So if you're shooting a Canon over here and a Sony over there, they have different color sciences, but by shooting the color chart at the head of the roll, you can accurately match them in post instead of eyeballing it, which takes forever. Moving on, we have the i1 Filmmaker Kit. Now this is really cool because A, you get two products for cheaper than if you bought them separately, but also this is really everything you need to be good at what you do if you know what you're doing. So I'm being overly simplistic here for the sake of brevity. So first things first, like with the Colorchecker video, you've got your color targets. You've got white, gray, black for, you know, your little eyedropper. This is white, this is gray, this is black. You've also got your similar, you know, you got the saturated colors, skin tones, grayscale, white, black, gray, etc. That's actually 3 white targets. I didn't notice that. That's interesting. But since it is so small, it's a little difficult to white balance off of, which is why I like the video, because it's big. With this guy, you kind of have to like get real close to, unless you've got the kind of camera where you can just select white. Like on my camera, you got to kind of fill the frame with the white. But if you've got, I think DSLRs do this, where you could just be like, and then just point to this and say this is white, and then it'll do off that. If you've got one of those cameras, then that isn't even a problem. So you've shot that or the Colorchecker video on set. What do you do now? Well, you're in post and everything's gravy train from here, right? Wrong. Are you editing on a calibrated display? Chances are you're not. What this does is calibrate your display. This is the i1 display from X-Rite. Why is this important? I would argue that this is almost more important than shooting the color chart or white balancing properly or whatever, because you can eyeball your white balance. Maybe you could get away with white balancing off the gray card, or maybe you just have the setting, or you have a known value that you're working with, or maybe you even got one of those really expensive color temperature meters. That all doesn't matter if you're editing on an uncalibrated display, because after your grade or even your correction, all you're really doing is editing for your display if it's uncalibrated, because it only will look good on your display. With one of these, you can ensure that the way it looks on your monitor is the way it's going to look for the intended target. And I'm not saying everyone's display, I'm saying the intended target, because what this does is allows you to make sure that you're monitoring color accurately, which is huge, but also that your gamma is correct as well, and you're in the right color space. So you can use this to ensure that you are displaying P3 properly, or Rec 709, or Rec 2020, or whatever, Gamma 2.2, 2.4, whatever you're aiming for. This can calibrate your monitor for that. A note about this that I find interesting is it has an automatic setting that my Dell Ultra Sharp was able to utilize. My old ass Samsung television was not. And that worked really quick, flawlessly. And shout out to Dell, which comes out of the factory calibrated. It only did a minor color correction, barely noticeable, but did change the gamma for me, which is something I wanted. The Samsung I had tried to calibrate 2 years ago with a competitor to this product, and it was unable to do so. And so I kind of just wrote that monitor off as like, well, use that as a display, but don't do anything color referencey on it. And then when I got this, I was like, let's see if it can do it. And it did it. So now the two monitors match more or less. I mean, it's an old monitor, so it's a little off. But it's, interestingly enough, it's much, much closer to the known reference of the Dell, which I know is actually correct. So that was a big surprise, and I really got to give it to X-Rite for that. This also has a setting where you can use the room's luminance value and color temperature using this side to adjust your display so that it is more accurate in your environment, because depending on how bright your room is, or a whole number of different factors, it can affect the way that your eyes see the display. So if you are in a dedicated editing bay, for instance, that the light never changes, the color of the light never changes, everything's the same, that's a great feature. You can also use this thing to calibrate any display, projectors, cell phones, TVs. There's a number of if it's an image, this thing can help calibrate it with the software from X-Rite, which is free. So to wrap this up, because I think we've been going for some time, these are kind of like industry standard products. They're almost difficult to review because of just they are what they are, and they're kind of perfect as is. There's not a lot to say about them, except for, I will say, this thing is, if you had to get anything, I would say get this. And if you've got a little extra cash, go for the Filmmaker Kit, because this Colorchecker Passport gives you all the functionality of the Colorchecker video in a small, robust little package that you can fit, again, in your pocket, AC kit, Pelican case, whatever. And if you've got it with you, you're going to use it. I could see having something like this if you're always strapped for space. You're not going to chuck this in your backpack because you might damage it, or it takes up too much room or something. So that is really nice. If space is not an issue, this is probably a better option. Higher resolution chart, bigger white balance target, whatever. They're all great though. And, you know, like I said about gray cards, they're still very useful. X-Rite makes gray cards. This is just some off-brand one. They make other products that are great. X-Rite's been doing this a really long time, so, you know, they're one of the brands you can trust for sure. So, thank you to X-Rite for sending me these products to check out. Thank you to ProVideo Coalition, and thank you for watching. Have a good day.